welcome to the Chai Academy, being recorded live from the Chai Center. We are in the middle of a course called Fascinating Jewish Personalities, and we have each class is independent, encapsulated, so you don't have to have prior knowledge from, and that's true of every class that I give. I try to make it as complete as I can. So yesterday, the class was on Sigmund Freud, and today we're going to be talking about Chaim Weizmann. Now it's interesting. They knew each other. They were actually argued with each other. They had different approaches to Zionism, and they differed so greatly that Chaim Weizmann actually, gravitated to a whole different party and a whole different group of people. So Chaim Weizmann was born in Belarus, which is formerly part of the Soviet Union. Belarus is like north of Moscow, very north of Moscow. And he was the third of 15 children. So he was the third. And it's interesting, out of those 15, 10 of them made Aliyah to Israel at some point. And one of them was killed. One of them, who was a communist, an avid communist, was actually killed during the purge, the Stalin purge. But very smart. All of them, one after the other, were geniuses. And Dr. Chaim Weizmann was also a genius. In fact, they tell a tale that Einstein and Weizmann, that was a combination, God forbid, Einstein and Weizmann were together they were roommates on a ship that was, traveling. They were going somewhere. And can you imagine such prestigious roommates together? I mean, I had a roommate in yeshiva who's now the chief rabbi of Kharkov, a huge city in the Ukraine. So I guess I can say I slept with the greats, but they were roommates, and they tell the tale is that Einstein tried to teach Weizmann the theory of relativity, his theory of relativity. So when they finally docked and reporters were there, and they asked him, "Do you understand? Did he teach you the theory of relativity?" So he goes, "I learned a lot. The main thing I learned is that Einstein definitely understands the theory of relativity, whereas I don't." Anyway, it's an extremely popular myth that because Weizmann, he was who was a biochemist, because he was the one that gave the British ammunition, TNT, and he gave them, cordite and flammable materials, etc. That therefore the British rewarded him and his people, Palestine, Israel, right? It was Palestine, the Balfour Declaration, and therefore the British went to conquer Palestine, and issuing the Balfour Declaration. So it's just not true. There is a grain of truth, is that the British took Palestine during the war, took Palestine from the Ottoman Empire, and sought Jewish support. So they said, "Oh, look what we have, look what we've gotten, or look what we're getting. Please support us with the donations, with your involvement, etc., etc." So that part is true, but it has really nothing to do with what Weizmann was working on per se. Now, Weizmann was born he traveled around, because of his studies. So he moved to Pinsk, and then to Germany, a city in Germany. Then eventually he moved to Berlin. When he moved to Berlin, he became a teacher, professor at a university, and he was engaged to Sophia Geroa, and he's engaged to her for 4 years. Sometime during those 4 years, he had an affair with Vera Katzman, and he actually left Sophia, and he ended up marrying Vera Katzman. So the students, his students, who were all probably very bright students of biochemistry, etc., they actually held a mock trial where where Weizmann, Chaim Weizmann, was put on trial, and the verdict at this mock trial was that Chaim Weizmann has to stop his bad ways and marry Sophia, and he did the wrong thing. Which I guess anytime there's infidelity, even during an engagement, it's a terrible thing. Hi, Susan. So he married Vera, and he had 2 sons. One, Benji, was a dairy farmer, and the other, Michael, was actually an Air Force pilot for the British, and he was killed in action. His body was never found. From Germany, he moved to England. He moved to Manchester. So Benji was a dairy farmer in England, and Michael was a as I said, a Royal Air Force pilot in England. Chaim Weizmann. Chaim Weizmann was a tremendous, a strident Zionist. He was very, extremely passionate. He tried to get to the first Zionist conference with Theodor Herzl. He was a follower. He believed in Theodor Herzl, but he couldn't make it to the first because of certain travel restrictions. But he did make it to the second. He was, and so he ended up in Manchester. He was a PhD, a chemist, and he met, and this is actually, he was such a pivotal Zionist, and because of this encounter, he met Member of Parliament Arthur Balfour. It's before he became Lord, and he was talking to him about Zionism, and Arthur Balfour told him, I can't really help you. I'm limited in what I can do. I don't think I can help you. He says, however, Theodor Herzl has an idea, and I think it's a good idea. And the idea Theodor Herzl had, which most people don't speak about, was that, and this was, by the way, this is promoted at the 6th Zionist Conference, was to forget Israel. It's too complicated. However, set up, and this was discussed at the Zionist Conference, set up a place in Uganda, set up cities in the country of Uganda as a safe haven for the Jewish people, a place to run. Right? So it would accomplish that. Going to Israel accomplishes, of course, returning to your homeland, and it's holy in Jerusalem, and etc. But going to Uganda would save lives, albeit lacking spiritually. So it was discussed at the 6th Zionist Conference. So Balfour suggested to Weizmann to do that. Go to Uganda. I can help you there. I can't help you with Israel right now. So Weizmann looked at Arthur Balfour, Member of Parliament, right? And he says, let me ask you, Arthur, would you ever leave London to live in Saskatchewan in Canada, which is mainly water, by the way, mainly rivers and seas, etc. And so Arthur Balfour said, no, of course, never. I would never abandon London. He goes, I'm not going to abandon Israel. So it's a ridiculous notion to go to Uganda, Liberia, Uganda, right? And Balfour understood him, but he says, I'm not doing that. There's no way we as Jews are going to Uganda. We can't take that option seriously. Anyway, he became a Belarus citizen. He became a citizen and a loyal citizen of the United Kingdom. And in fact, he retained his citizenship until 1948. 1948, he gave it up. Maybe back then you had to give it up to become the first president of Israel. But anyway, 10 years after he first met the Member of Parliament, Arthur Balfour, he met the Foreign Secretary, Balfour. And at that time, he was really producing TNT, cordite, flammable liquids, and he was really producing so much for the British government to allow them to win this First World War. And he had also at that time made friends with the former Prime Minister of England, David Lloyd George, and he was lobbying. He was lobbying for Israel to become to get Israel for the Jewish people. And Balfour, who was the foreign minister, the foreign secretary, so between them both, he was able to procure Israel as the Jewish homeland, right, under the Balfour Declaration. So the Balfour Declaration, it was given because of Lord Arthur Balfour, is that it can be and it should be a Jewish safe haven in the land of their ancestry. That was the Balfour Declaration, to allow Jews to migrate there. Until that time, they weren't. It was under the Ottoman Empire, and Jews were not allowed to migrate there. They used to sneak in from various lands, but it wasn't anything formal. And that put him on the map. Jews began to recognize that this man, this Weizmann, has connections. He's articulate, and he's powerful. And the former Prime Minister George and Arthur Balfour, Lord Balfour, they saw that he was a loyal citizen of the United Kingdom. So he wasn't just an outside agitator, but rather this man had passion for Jews, and at the same time, he had tremendous passion for the United Kingdom. And he was so loyal to the United Kingdom that actually Ben Gurion criticized him. Not only Ben Gurion, others criticized him, but he stood up. He said, I live in England, I'm a loyal subject of England, and I'm not going to agree with Ben Gurion on everything. And in fact, in 1944, when Lord Moyne was assassinated by the Lehi party, so he said it hurt as much that they did that, the Lehi party, the Jews, that faction of the Jews did that. It hurt as much as the killing of his own son. He also traveled to the United States to try to convince that to Israel that remember the Balfour Declaration was in 1927 or something, but this is much later, and so he went to the United States, and this is in 40s, to try and convince Harry Truman to support Israel. And in fact, Truman used to have a nickname for Weizmann. He used to call him the old professor, right? And the old Jewish professor, something like that. And anyway, he did have an impact on Truman. The United States was actually the first country to recognize Israel in 1948. And so think about it. He met with the high and mighty, and what he was really a professor, a practicing professor. He was working as a scientist, practicing scientist. He was also a professor. Excuse me. I have a condition. I have insomnia. But he was a powerful man, and I think it stands out that it's incredible. He's incredible. What one man, um, right? The one man can accomplish. Um, what was the curious connection to Jews by the UK? They kept sending records from Nazis and instrumental in the US to embrace Israel. I think part of it, I think, was him. I think also that, look, the United Kingdom and the United States needed support, right? There was a war going on, right? There was a First World War, then there's a Second World War, and I think specifically in the Second World War, both the United States and the United Kingdom said, if we need to get the Jews backing, so they fought for Israel. That was I think a great push for them to support for Israel. But anyway, going back to our theme, is that the one man, a person should never say to themselves, what can I do? What can I do? I'm a mere person. I'm one person. And by the way, in this fight against anti-Semitism, time and time again, and I'm very vocal, and I write, and I talk, and I call. But I often say to myself, what can one man do? But I think the answer is one man can do a lot. And I think one man could say, what can one man do? How can I enhance my connections? How can this one man enhance political connections in order to really help? That's the question I should be asking myself. Not what can one man do. It's very difficult as one man. But what can one man do? So what can I do as one man? That should really be the question we're asking ourselves. Because he did. So I say, and it's interesting. 10 of his siblings, 10 out of 15, one was killed. One, by the way, another sibling was also a communist, and was eventually went to Siberia and was sent to exile. And after Stalin died, she was allowed to come back. But 10 of them clearly, and by the way, they're all doctors. Whoever this guy hung out with, by the way, was doctors. He hung out with fellow chemists, and it's just amazing. But his siblings were very, very smart, and most of them had multiple degrees. When Israel became a state in 1948, so Ben Gurion became the prime minister, and they decided they're going to have a prime minister, and they're going to have another position called the president. And they asked Chaim Weizmann to be the first president of Israel, which he gladly accepted. He had no idea that Ben Gurion, in the way he set up the government, he had no idea, Weizmann, that the president, being the president of Israel, had no power. It was only an honorific. Right? I think the president can do one thing now. He can establish a government. In other words, okay, yes, okay, you've gotten enough votes. Okay, yes, you have a seat. Yes, you have 3 seats. You have 5 seats. And people, it's symbolic that people come and they visit. Obviously, the president is politically connected, and world leaders seek to speak to him, but no real power. And when he found out that his power was seriously truncated, and seriously, very, very minimal consequence, is that he lamented, and he said, I didn't realize the wall that Ben Gurion pulled over my eyes, and he says the only thing I can stick my nose into is my handkerchief. The only thing that I can put the only thing that I can nose around is my handkerchief. He realized that he got shortchanged. However, you give a busy person, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. He founded the Weizmann Institute, which is a scientific institute, which and if you know Israel, Israel daily are coming out with patents. incredible engineering patents, incredible drug patents, scientific patents, and the Weizmann Institute is at the forefront. It's actually where he's buried. To be honest, he's buried at the Weizmann Institute, and and what he founded is world fame. Just amazing, amazing what he did. So even though as president, his power was stifled, this man was single-handedly convinced the Brits for the Balfour Declaration, and then recognition, and the Americans, and in fact, Truman, when Truman voted for Israel, in the UN, in the United States, he said shortly thereafter, "Now I can tell the old man Weizmann that I'm true to my word, and I'm not a liar." That was the first thing on Truman's mind when the United States stood up for Israel. Just, um, just, just amazing, amazing. So somebody, Neil, commented. So his presidency was same as the vice presidency. I think that is a truism. The vice president has power that they can to be the 51st vote, which is more powerful than even a president of Israel could be. What Weizmann could do, what the president could do, is say, put the gavel. Yes, we have a government, but it's not much more than that. Not much more than that. Okay, this concludes Weizmann. There is so much on him and what he accomplished, who he met. The cordite, the fermentation. He came out with fermentation. The idea that you can take something, ferment it, and cause it to exist and persevere, and that was all him. That was all him. So, if you have any questions, rabbi@thechaicenter.com. In addition, if you would like to see more classes, you can go to rabbi@thechaicenter.com/academy or youtube.com, and you type in Chai Academy. Yes, he was an amazing man, and it was truly an honorific to be the first president of Israel. The current president of Israel, Rivlin, so he just certified the elections. So God bless, and we'll meet again.